Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. Kirkwood-raised musician David Sanborn has won 6 Grammy Awards and sold millions of albums across a more than 50-year career. Known for his warm sound on alto saxophone, Sanborn has won acclaim as a solo artist and as a collaborator with a long list of stars in the worlds of jazz, rock, and pop. This evening, Jazz St. Louis will honor Sanborn with the inaugural Stewart Center Lifetime Achievement Award in Excellence. Last week, St. Louis Public Radio's Jeremy D. Goodwin had the opportunity to speak with David Sanborn about how growing up and playing music in St. Louis shaped his style. Today, we'd like to bring you part of their conversation.
David, you've received many different awards and recognitions in your times. I wonder, what does it mean to you to be honored for your life's work like this in St. Louis?
The fact that I'm getting this award in St. Louis is very meaningful to me. And, just to come back and, every time I go back, I, almost without my having to think about it, I just kind of go back in time and, I remember DeBoliver and, all these street names and bring up all these things, Del Mar and all the great jazz clubs that were in St. Louis and East St. Louis. And, I was really formed as a musician by the places and the people that were here when I was growing up, and being mentored by these older musicians and some of whom were my peers. And I feel, very, like kind of full circle kind of a thing coming back to St. Louis. And it's a great, with great gratitude, I accept the acknowledgement of this.
You were coming up, you were barely a teenager when you were coming up through a jazz scene that doesn't really exist in St. Louis anymore.
No.
And so when you were going out at 13, 14, seeing an Albert King or seeing Ike and Tina Turner, where was that happening?
There were these, I guess you'd call them dances, where I grew up in Kirkwood. They used to call them teen towns. And there were these, I guess, recreational centers, community centers in various places, Sunset Hills. And in the warmer weather, the bands would set up outside around a swimming pool. And all these great regional bands came through, people like Little Milton and Albert King. And my friend and I, we used to hang out, like at the front of the bandstand, just like completely hypnotized by this music. As it turns out, we befriended a keyboard player that was playing with both Little Milton and Albert King. And his name was Rick Bolden, and I asked him, I got on my nerve, and I said, hey, could I possibly sit in? So they allowed me to get up stage and, play on stage and play these, with the horn section doing stuff like da-da, da-da, playing these horn parts. Not very complicated, but just to be in that situation and be with these musicians and just to feel the power of the music like that was, it was astonishing to me.
Chasing rabbits. Yes, I have. I'm tired of jumping out of windows, running out back doors, sleeping in closets, crawling on the floor. I'm in too thick. I've got a kid. The cheating habit.
At some point, you graduated from the teen towns and that circuit to Gaslight Square, right? Which, again, is a neighborhood that isn't there anymore. It started to rebound a little bit. There's a Gaslight Theater and there's the Blue Strawberry Cabaret house there now.
In that same area?
Yeah, right, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was packed with clubs. It's described as a sort
Yeah.
of bohemian area. So what was the scene like there, and what did that have to do with your development?
Well, I mean, as you described it, it was kind of, St. Louis's version of, I guess, Greenwich Village or whatever. But it was just, I think, 2 or 3 blocks. I think it was Olive Street, right? Wasn't that the main drag?
Yep.
And then
Olive and Boyle, I want to say.
Olive and Boyle, yeah. But there were 30 clubs, restaurants, venues, places. It was like a carnival. It was bright lights, big city. And there was this little club around the corner, kind of down a back alley, kind of an afterthought. It was almost looked like a storage locker, off a parking lot, called The Other Side. And it was a very, very small club, maybe like the size of a shipping container. And then there was this great trio playing. And one of the regulars there was this guy named Rick Bolden, piano player who we had met playing with Albert King and Little Milton. So we went in there and said, reacquainted ourselves with him. And, my friend and I, we listened to them a couple of weekends, and then I kind of got up my nerve to ask him if I could sit in. And they said okay, and I had memorized a Sonny Stitt solo, and so I went in and called the blues and played this solo, and they were very impressed because they didn't realize that I was not making this solo up. I was just kind of repeating it. Apparently they had never heard the original. So, they asked me to come back, and I learned more Sonny Stitt solos and, and just on and on and on, and gradually met other musicians in the area.
And I think this is maybe just a few years before the Black artist movement is going to start getting going in St. Louis and Chicago.
Yeah, it was.
Philip Wilson.
It was kind of an offshoot of the AACM. It was an acronym for American Association of Creative Musicians in Chicago. And Black Artist Group, BAG, was the kind of St. Louis version of that.
So, David, coming out of that kind of a scene where there's a lot of boundary pushing stuff going on in that jazz scene. You get a job with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band pretty early on. I wonder if, and you had the chance to play a minor obscure event called Woodstock with Butterfield. I wonder if that happening at that point in your life, how that affected your conception of just how you're going to work in this business, that you can take your chops to some really different sounding places.
It was really a learning process, and I think I was lucky in that, there weren't those boundaries then. There was a lot of freedom. And also, there was no YouTube. So you could really, go out on stage and screw up some nights. And it wasn't like a, world premiere event like it is now. You could kind of work stuff out in public. And because the scene was so kind of free and open, we had a chance to try a lot of different stuff. It was always exciting.
Do you have clear memories of Woodstock? Do you remember that performance or that experience fairly well?
Not much.
Yeah.
We were supposed to play before the last day, and because things were running so far behind, I think we were supposed to go on at midnight, and we ended up going on about 5 a.m. I don't have a lot of memories of it, except I remember the sun coming up while we were playing. And I think we were playing this blues tune called Everything's Gonna Be All Right. I had never seen that many people in one place before in my life. There were still a couple of 100,000 people when we got there. That had been a summer of, a lot of big pop festivals, the Atlanta Pop Festival, Hollywood, Florida, And that was the culmination of it. And I think a lot of things changed after that. I think it really caught the ear or the attention of the music business, and they saw, wow, this is a cash cow here. We can cash in on this youth market. So I think in some ways it took away some of the luster of it. But things change, and they don't necessarily get better or worse. They just get different. The idea of these music icons or whatever you choose to call them, real giants in the music, jazz or whatever the style of music is. I think it feels different now than it did then. There's so much more It's so much more fragmented now than it was then. It was more kind of unified. And I think that was the power of the record companies and the promotion machinery and all of that, and distribution, terrestrial radio and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's just not, it's harder to capture a mass audience unless you're playing music that is really, I don't want to say simple, because I don't want to denigrate any of the really popular music that's happening now, because a lot of it has great value, but there seems to be less real uniqueness and individuality than there did then. There was a lot more cross-fertilization going on. People were doing things that had not been done before and combining things in ways that hadn't been done before. I think the only thing that's happening in that regard is hip-hop and rap now. I think that in terms of innovation, I think that's, a lot of the innovation is happening in that particular genre. But, hey, look, what do I know? I'm just this alto saxophone player trying to figure out my life and just really enjoying the process of, learning something new about music every day. And I think the great thing about music is that you never master it. You're always a student. And I think that, you have to maintain a humility about that. There's no winner here. It's not about winning anything. It's about opening doors. And, I think because jazz is so sophisticated and operates on so many levels at the same time, rhythmically, harmonically, melodically, structurally, that everything is in play all the time, or can be. Whereas the other forms of music, let's say more pop-oriented music, is, especially the rhythmic orientation, is more structured in a way that can be confining, and that you're aware when you're outside of it. Whereas jazz, you can really push the boundaries. And I think the possibilities with jazz are endless. And I think for younger musicians especially, to understand that this is like, this teaches you skills far beyond just the music. It teaches you, ways of thinking, ways of looking at the world, and discipline and organization and cooperation and interaction and listening to each other.
This episode was produced by Jeremy Goodwin. Audio engineering by Jeremy Goodwin and editing
by Emily Woodbury. Podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
St. Louis on the Air proudly supports local artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.